Good evening, everyone. This is Debbie Henderson from Debbie's Designs. Welcome to my Sunday share. I'm going to wait a few seconds for everyone to join me tonight. Hi, Maggie. Hi, Kathy. Hi, Diane. Okay, I can see everybody coming on, so let's get started. My son and his girlfriend are actually visiting today, so I'm taking a break and doing the video for you guys, and then I'll get back to my company. So tonight I'm using the Country Home stamp set. This was a stamp set that you guys all picked, or most of you guys picked for me to use tonight for my Sunday share. I'm going to be creating 2 cards. For the first one, this is what I'm using. The fancy cut that you see right here is actually 2 layers, and I'm using the delicate lace framelits dies, so you can see that I have the 2 layers. I'm also using chicken wire, which is new in the holiday catalog. Now I've already gone ahead and cut my 2 mossy meadow pieces. So these measure 5.5 by 1.5. And the die that I used is this one right here. You've seen me use this one in the last few weeks. And then I'll try to use this one in the future. I haven't used this one for any of my live videos yet. Don't forget to share as you're watching tonight so that I can draw a name for a winner. So for this card, I'm using thick Whisper White 11 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. I'm also using another piece. This is just regular Whisper White, measuring 3 3/4 by 2 3/4, and that's going to be for the image. And then we also need a piece just for stamping. And this is from the Festive Farmhouse Designer paper. I'm just using 2 patterns. They measure 2.5 by 2.5, and then 3 inches by 2.5. So let's get started in assembling this card. I've already scored my card base at 5.5. Welcome everyone. I can see you coming on. I'm so glad you're here. First thing I'm going to glue is the designer paper, and it's going to be even with the top and the right hand side. And I'm going to use, maybe I'll use this pattern this time just to show you the difference. I'm going to switch it up. Oops, I'm all out of snail. So I'm going to switch it up just a little bit so we'll have more of the cherry cobbler peeking through. So there's my 2 pieces of designer paper. Next, I'm going to glue the die cut pieces. So I'm going to start and even them out right on the edge. And then I'm going to layer the second one over the first one. Aren't these pretty? I just love these dies. Okay, let me make sure I don't have any overlapping pieces, which I do, so let me trim those. So it's Sunday today. I hope you guys get some stamping in. I've been busy with my son visiting, so I didn't get any additional stamping in today, but that's fine. He doesn't visit very often because he lives 4.5 hours away from me. Now I'm going to take some glue dots, add those to the mossy meadow layer, and I'm going to do about 5 of them, just staggered. And you'll see why in a minute. Okay, now I'm going to take my chicken wire, and this stuff is so easy to cut. I'm going to be using a little over 3 pieces or 3 rows of it. And I'm going to glue that right here to the glue dots. Press it in place. So see what a nice layer that adds to the die cut layers. And then I'm going to bring in my ribbon. Now this is the double stitched ribbon. And let's see, we went with the X's on the first card, so let me flip it over to the stitched lines. And because the glue dots are still peeking through from the chicken wire, I can actually glue that over the glue dots also. Okay, so now we've got two cards with the same pieces, but they look a little different. Now let's do a little bit of stamping. So this time I'm using, where's my stamp set? So we have a pitcher and a watering can. So I'm going to use the pitcher on this first card. And I'm using gray granite ink. The pitcher is going to be stamped on my scrap piece. And then I'm just going to bring in a blender pen. And I'm going to color with the ink lines. But because this is so light, I am going to have to use a little bit from the lid. And I want to keep this mostly white, so I'm just going to color on the edges. What I'm mostly doing is adding shadow to my can, or to my pitcher. So this is just the ink pen, or the ink from my ink pad, and a blender pen. That's all I'm going to do for that. Now, a little trick that I've shown before, but maybe some of you missed it. I'm going to hand cut this pitcher, and I also want to hand cut the inside of the handle. I'm going to bring in a handheld punch. And I punch 2 holes, and that's going to help me start cutting around that handle. It just makes it a starting point by adding those holes in there. And sometimes when I have a larger area to cut like this, I use the 1/2 inch circle punch too. Okay, so see how easy that was to cut? I just need to trim right here. It's a little rough. There we go. So now I can go ahead and cut the remainder of my pitcher. And these 2 images, the one I'm using on the other card, which will be the can, the milk can or the watering can, whatever you want to call it, is pretty much straight lines across, so they're easy to cut. The inside of the handle is actually the most difficult area. Okay, so there's the little pitcher. And then I've got the Festive Farmhouse Suite, the twine. I'm just going to add a double knot to the handle. And then I'll trim that with my scissors. Let me go a little bit shorter. Okay, so there's my little pitcher. That's all set. Next, I'm going to bring in the piece of white. And, oops, wait a minute. I forgot to take out that stamp image. So I'm using the cattails on card number 2, and I'm using the cotton on card number 1. And again, I'm going to use the gray granite ink. And I'm going to stamp that right at the top. And I'm bringing in the Old Olive Light Blends marker. Even though this isn't Memento ink, I'm just actually going to tap just a little bit of color. And all I'm coloring is the green parts. I'm not going to color anything else. Now this is the cotton. Here's another leaf and one more right here. That's all the color I'm going to add. Now the next step, I'm going to stamp the sentiment right over the cotton image. And because I'm using cherry cobbler, it really shows up nicely. And then I'm going to glue the picture in place with Stamping Dimensionals. So I know a lot of you guys told me you had not purchased this set yet because you were waiting to see samples. So I hope I'm going to talk you into it. There's my little picture. And lastly, more dimensionals. And that's going to go in the front of the card. Oops, I got something on this card here. I was a little late posting my winners for my Friday folds class, but I think I did those this morning, so I should be all caught up on my winners. Okay, so that's card number 1. So this was using the picture, the cotton, and the sentiment. So for card number 2, it's actually going to be the other flower image and the watering can. Let me show you the pieces we need for that card. This is my card for card number 2. Isn't that pretty? Now for this one, I'm using Rich Razzleberry 5.5 or 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. I'm going to show you guys a little bit of different tricks also to use with the Tin Tile Embossing Folder. I just thought since I had it out, I might as well show you some tips and tricks. Okay, so what else am I using on this? The new galvanized paper, which is a little shiny. That measures 5 1/4 by 4. Some scrap white for stamping. One of the pearlized doilies, and I'm actually going to cut that in half. And then this is the designer paper, and I didn't write down the name of it. It's not near my fingertips. It's the one with the cotton that goes with this set. And this measures 5.5 inches long, and I just cut out a row of the squares. So these are also tiles. So now let me bring you in my big shot. I'm going to show you a couple things to do. Now, I did emboss the background for my card. I also added some color to age it, so it looks like there's some rust spots on it. But let me show you a couple other different things that you can do with the Tin Tile Embossing Folder. So on this one, I've actually gone ahead and inked the inside of my embossing folder and then run it through so it presses the color inside or on top of the cardstock. For the next one, I actually added another ink color and I used it. It didn't do as much detail, but this still creates a nice background. It looks rustic. This one, I actually ink the folder, and I'm going to do these to show you how I did them. And then all I did was put this inside and use it as a stamp. So let me show you how to do both of these before we move on to the card. Now this time I'm going to use Blushing Bride cardstock with Blushing Bride ink. I'm going to go ahead, and when you're looking for the bumpy side, 90% of the time it's the side with the Stampin' Up! Logo. So I'm going to go ahead and ink the folder. So I'm just pouncing. And then I'm going to lay down the cardstock. And let me bring in my big shot. Now this is one of our thicker folders, so we don't need the cutting plate on the top. And look how pretty that is. So this would be the inked embossing. You ink the embossing folder, run it through the big shot. So you got 2 samples here to go by. Isn't that pretty? So I love using this technique. Now let me wipe down the embossing folder, and I'll show you how I did the other one. Okay, let me see. I'll pick, let me pick a green. I'll pick Old Olive. Let me wipe this on my pants because I don't have a towel. I'm going to go ahead and ink this one, same way. Lay this down, close the lid, and then I'm going to actually flip it over, and all I'm going to do is press down. So I'm using this one as a stamp. You just have to make sure you press so that the ink transfers. And then that's what this one looks like. And like I said, it's not as detailed, but it still creates a nice background to use. It kind of looks like bubbles. Let me wipe this down so we can move on to the card. Now, normally, when I'm not videoing and doing this, I usually run this through the faucet. Now, I do have a towel right here. I'm going to grab that so I can wipe this down. Okay, so those are 2 techniques. So, inked embossing and then using the embossing folder as a stamp, just to give you 2 other choices. So now this time I'm going to bring in the galvanized paper, put that through. The thing you have to watch about this one, you want your lines to be straight. Okay, let me bring my sample back in. So what I did with this one is I brought in my rich raspberry ink. Okay, there's my tin tile. I have a sponge here somewhere. Or actually, I'm using the wrong ink. I brought in Calypso Coral because I wanted to give it that rusty look. And all I did was use a sponge dauber. And then I just rubbed ink over the bumps, just to make it look like there's some rust spots. Okay, and that's all I'm going to do there. So now let's go ahead and glue some of these layers. And if you'll notice on this embossing folder, you could actually use either side. The debossed side, which is this side, or the embossed side, which pushes down more. I've been selling a lot of this paper in my classes. Everybody's in love with it. Now the 2 doilies are next. And I am using the pearl side of them. So I'm pretty much just using this as a little doily for my little setup here. Next is the designer paper. And it is a little bit long, and I'm going to trim it. That goes right there. Now, through the magic of setting up my layers ahead of time, I've already gone ahead and stamped. So you can see that this is the same image. I've put it sitting inside the watering can, and then I have one sitting on the designer paper. It takes a while to hand cut these, so I went ahead and colored one. I'm going to do the second one with you. I'm using my blends markers. So first up is the Rich Razzleberry. We're going to color all of this ribbon. So I'm just adding the darker color where you would see the shadow. And these images are pretty small, so you really can't mess these up. I ordered the rest of the markers, the blends markers today too. I didn't have all of the new colors that just came out, so I just ordered those today. So you'll see me using more of the colors. So I started with the darker color first, and then I'm blending the lighter color. Okay, so that's the ribbon. Now for the little, this almost looks like an artichoke to me. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm just using the pineapple punch. This one is the dark. And then I'm also coloring the little flowers here. Oops, I forgot these ones. And then we've got the Old Olive Light, and all I did was add a little bit of green to all the branches, and then we do have one leaf right here. So these are pretty easy to color. I'm using the thinner end of the brush, and then next I am using the bronze and the ivory to do my little cattails. And then we're also going to have to do the watering can or the milk can. Okay, so that's all done. So these two pieces are ready for the card. Now I'm going to bring in my scrap white. And where's my Memento ink? Right here. Julie, Debbie, do you know if the blends markers in the holiday catalog will carry over? I'm assuming they're going to carry over because they're all current ink colors. They're not colors that are going to be retiring. So I'm going to say yes on that. Okay, now for the watering can, I'm using Smoky Slate, Light and Dark, and then Calypso Coral. This is the dark. Let me bring my card in so you guys can see it. So I'm pretty much starting on the outside of the can with the dark. I'm just going to outline with a couple rows of color. And let's see, we'll do a little bit on the handles. Now this part of the handle is towards the back, so that's going to be darker. And now I'm bringing the Smoky Slate Light. I'm going to blend those two lines where they meet. And I did leave a little bit of white in there to make it look like it's shiny. So I just kind of play with this until I'm happy with the look. Okay, now I also want to add a little bit of rust to my can. So I'm going to bring in the Calypso Coral. And you know that rust is not even anywhere. It's usually quite splotchy. So I'm just kind of dabbing it here and there. Whoops, I went over the line there. Let me bring in my color lifter. We'll make that go away. And let me hand cut this one. So this one is pretty easy too, because you kind of just follow the lines. There's nothing major about cutting this one out. I know a lot of you guys don't like to hand cut, fussy cut, but this one's pretty easy. Now, if you'll notice when I'm fussy cutting, I actually steer my cardstock in the direction the scissors are going, and that makes it a lot easier. And I know as we all get older, our eyesight is not the same. I usually wear glasses to see far away. I haven't needed them yet too much to do some fussy cutting. Okay, let me bring all my pieces in. So the watering can is going to be glued with Stampin' Dimensionals. And I'm going to layer that about here. Now, one of the flower bunches, the one that goes with the watering can, is also going to be glued with Stampin' Dimensionals because I wanted that one to be raised. And I'm actually going to tuck it in under a little bit. Now, I don't like the height of my watering can because my flowers are going to stick out a little too much. So let me bring this down just a tad. I still want this to fit in an envelope. Okay, that's better. And the next one, I'm just going to glue with, I'm not sure yet because I can't find there's my snail. Okay, I'm going to glue this one down with the snail, and I'm also going to tuck that one in. And lastly, we need to do the sentiment. That's going to be with Memento Black. It's the little hello. I'm going to show you a little trick for that also. Now I'm going to use the classic label punch, but I want it to be really short. So I'm going to take what I just punched out, insert into the punch, and keep moving it in there. And there, I've just made a shorter version of the classic label punch. Now I did add a little bit of rust to my sentiment with the sponge. And then I used the mini dimensionals to glue that in place. And that's going to go right on the watering can. So how's that for card number 2? I hope you like that one too. Let me bring in card number 1. So these ones are pretty much identical. And then these use the same products, but I flipped this cardstock piece over to the cherry cobbler side. So I hope you like both of my cards. Again, please share my video. I'll be picking a winner tomorrow morning for one of each card. So thanks so much for joining me for Sunday Share. And let me see what I've got going on next week. I have Techniques Tuesday coming on Tuesday, and then my normal Design with Debbie class on Wednesday. So thanks so much for visiting, everyone, and I hope you have a good remainder of your Sunday. Have a good night.